Hello and welcome to True Audio Files. As you can see, I'm in a little bit different environment today. This is my brother John Carter. My big influence in terms of listening to music and my starts of getting to listen to music. As part of that, we actually went to the second to the last, supposedly, so second to the last Kiss show of all times, or at least the second to the last show on the tour. That's supposed to be the last tour of all times. We'll see. But anyways, it's a great show. That's why I'm wearing the Kiss shirt on a jazz shootout. But so as you can see in the background, today we're going to do a sound quality shootout between the two, with both of us kind of giving our take on it. And it's for Something Else with basically Cannonball Adderley with Miles Davis and several others, as I'm sure most of you know if you're watching this video. But I want to start off with having my brother talk a little bit more about the album itself, because he definitely has a little bit more insight on the album and knows a little bit more about the album than I do, even though I have some familiarity with it, but he has much more. So what's your take?
Maybe a little more.
Yes.
I mean, this is the golden era of jazz. I mean, anything from 1957, 1958, almost everything sounds perfect. I don't know why, but there's just something about those years in jazz where everything sounds perfect. And this record I actually haven't listened to for a while until Jim brought these over. And I have the OG of this, which is a mono version from 1958. And I just forgot how incredible the playing is on this record. And what a match of personalities on this. And you realize why Miles Davis is never second billing on a record. But he's second billing on this record. And the reason is because Cannonball Adderley is insane. If you listen to this record, Cannonball, Miles, Hank, Sam, every single one of them hangs on every note. And if you have the wherewithal to sit down and really listen to this record, you can't predict what they're going to do with each phrase. And each phrase is so well thought out. And as you listen to it in these different pressings, you really can pick up on some of the pressings. This piece stands out more, and in some of them that piece stands out more. But the playing is unbelievable. So I really recommend taking this record, clearing everything off of your schedule. Don't look at anything. Listen to this record and try and imagine what they're going to do with the next phrase, and be surprised at how perfect it sounds and how thoughtful each phrase is.
Yeah, it's a great record.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Art Blakey before he did the Jazz Messengers and his drums on that too. So all-star cast, basically. But yeah, I definitely echo a lot of what my brother says here. And in general, usually when I listen to music, well, I should say, when I listen to my listening room, where I usually do my sound quality shootouts, I generally am sitting there just listening to the music, often closing my eyes so I can get a better sense of the space and the recording and things like that. So I can do a better A/B comparison. So we did the things a little bit different, but not too different in this this time around. We essentially, a couple of the things we did different. We actually did it on two systems. We have the system that's behind us here, and then he's got a higher end system up in his living room. So we listened to it on both, and it definitely yielded much different results on both. So we'll go over that, but generally I pick one song and I'll listen to that one song back and forth between all the different variations of the recordings we have. So, or I should say the pressings we have. So in this case, like you said, he has the mono first pressing, I believe, or at least early pressing, if not first. Then we have the classic vinyl series reissue that came out, I think, in 21 by Blue Note, and then the new Mofi one step. So what we listened to, was it Autumn Leaves?
Yeah, Autumn Leaves.
So we listened to Autumn Leaves, and it's kind of has some subtleness to it in terms of there's not a lot of stuff going on at one time, which is kind of cool. So you can kind of really listen to the different stuff. And I originally listened to the Mofi at home and listened to it before I brought all the stuff over here. And as usual, I think the Mofi sounded really good. I thought it had a pretty good neutral sound to it. Pretty good sound stage. One thing that was interesting to me that I noted on it is that an odd kind of thing that I think happens quite a bit with Rudy Van Gelder stuff, that stereo, is you'll often have the far left and far right panning on most stuff, although the piano is in the center. but then the reverb was in the center for like the horns, which was kind of interesting. So, uh, but so listen to those. Thought it sounded great. Put on um, the mono version actually for next, and the one thing that struck me on that one for sure was definitely more mid range, heavy on the mid range, which is pretty typical for these early pressings, and not as much treble again because they typically rolled off the high end on the earlier pressings. Uh, but still a decent bass. I'm not sure if it played quite as deep as the Mofi, but it definitely was there. Um, but it's hard to compare because and do a direct comparison obviously because it's mono, and because the one thing I think I picked out on this is that I think the piano may have been a little bit higher up in the mix on the mono in comparison to the stereo. So that was one of the differences that I noticed. Um, Before I go deeper into and talking about the classic vinyl, what was your kind of thoughts between that and the Mofi?
I mean, the one thing that my first impression of the MoFi, having listened to this one previously, is that the MoFi is almost too good. Like, I'm like, wow, I can hear all the spit, and it's sort of like, if you've heard this album a lot, then it's fun to hear the MoFi because you will hear things that you didn't hear before. But honestly, if this is the first version you ever heard, it might be distracting because it's like there's like so much going on in there, and you're like, wait, no. The thing about this, if you listen to this record, there isn't like a ton of tinkly highs, although it's not bad. I mean, the cymbals sound pretty good.
It sounds cymbals sounded pretty good on that one.
Brushes pretty much sound like crap on every version. It's much more better rendered crap in the Mofi version, but honestly, it's like shoes shuffling on this. You can't hear like sometimes
The nuances.
there's a good recording of brushes, and you're like, holy crap, I can hear every wire dragging across the drum skins. Not on this one. But what it does do is it drills the melody, it drills the mid range, it drills all of the melody straight into your brain, which I guess was what they were going for back then. These were recorded to be played on AM radio, and they sound like it a little bit. And there's nothing to distract you from the melody. So that's the plus of this. But
it's got more punch, I think, to it.
It definitely is punch. Like, it's just like, boom, that's in my head. So that's cool. One thing I'll say about this recording is that Rudy is famous for miking the piano poorly, which he did in this case, and usually under recording the bass, which he did not do in this case. The bass actually sounds good.
Yep.
And the one thing on the Mofi that I thought was cool, I could hear the wood in the bass, which you can't hear in this. You can hear the boom, boom, boom on this, but on that one you could hear the...
One of the nice things I like about a lot of these audiophile recordings is you really hear the timbre of the stuff.
Better word than what I used. Yeah. I think that's my overall impression. And then, of course, the classic is somewhere in between. It's really a very respectable version, except for that one pressing chirp that drives me crazy.
And if any of you know the classic vinyl reissue series and their early issues with the optimal pressings, there's occasional like blips, for lack of a better term, that it's kind of weird buzz sound to it. And there's like one spot on this.
And it's in the middle of a saxophone. And you're like, did he break his reed? It's like, no.
It's kind of weird. And I mean, I and like he said, I would say that the classic vinyl series definitely is sort of in between the two, with the one exception where I think that the treble is a little bit is definitely much higher, and on this system, it seemed a little too much. On the upstairs, it didn't seem as bad. It was a higher.
I think the tubes like brought that out more.
Yeah, it almost sounded like he was hitting a garbage can instead of a ride top instead of a ride cymbal on the cymbals, but didn't seem like that as much on the system upstairs. So your system, it may vary on yours, and maybe if you've got a little more top end on your system, it might come out as like that on the as the harshness. And that was kind of the thing that I've noticed also on. I thought the classic vinyl series one, the pop, if you will, on the trumpet specifically, Miles's trumpet, the muted sound doesn't kind of as in your face as it was on either of the two. Like, I think the Mofi was kind of in between the classic vinyl and the mono, where it kind of had some of that bite, for lack of a better term, but not quite as much bite as the mono. but then the classic vinyl had even less of that bite to it, so it didn't stand out, didn't pop
It
as much.
behaves.
Yes.
That-
Some people don't like that, and that might be why you may not like the classic vinyl series one as much in that sense. So, you know, that's kind of one of those things where, as usual, your choice may vary. But I mean, I maybe if you want to expound on your opinions on some of that stuff more.
My feeling is if you love this album and you're willing to hang on every phrase, you're going to get something different out of it on each of these recordings. You could probably just choose one between the classic or the Mofi because they're not different enough to necessarily warrant it. But literally, there were sections that popped out differently on each recording.
Mhm.
So that would be the reason to own them all.
Yeah.
If you were only going to buy one ever, I mean, maybe the classic is the way to go.
It's definitely a better value. I would say, I guess here's and my take would be is if you like that pop and that punch, if especially like on the muted trumpet, maybe the classic vinyl isn't the best choice for you. Where the Mofi one would be, or maybe an earlier pressing, maybe a stereo pressing, or even the mono, whatever your preference is in stereo and mono. I mean, the one drawback to the stereo, which sometimes bothers me, and it wasn't crazy bad on this one because at least they had something in the center, but oftentimes, and some to a certain degree, it happened on this one where, the drums and the bass were way panned off to the right, and the saxophone and the trumpet were way panned off to the left. You did have the piano in the middle, which was good, but sometimes that can be distracting. So, if you don't like that kind of a panning in the stereo, then the mono won't be good for that. And it does, if you like piano, the piano's gonna be a little bit more pronounced on the mono, I thought too. So
the piano staging on either of these later versions is pretty incredible.
yeah, it's pretty awesome. And the one thing I did also notice that on the Mofi is I think it had a little bit of a wider soundstage. Like I felt that it went a little bit beyond the speakers more than the classic vinyl series one did, uh, and as I usually find, or at least I feel I hear on the Mofi is that there's a little bit more like a 3D-ness to it, if you will. Like it's really hard to describe that sound. It just seems like it's more there in the room with you than maybe some of the other ones. And I didn't notice it as much on this, but usually that translates into a better separation between the instruments too. Like you can pick out every spot on the instrument, but because these have got such a hard panning, you're not really going to get that. This may have been recorded on a 3-track, and maybe that's why there's the hard panning and then the piano's in the middle. But anyway, I mean that's kind of my take. Did you have anything more that you wanted to add on this at all?
The one thing that was amazing to me is that in typical RVG fashion, the piano not recorded that well, and the brushes not recorded all that well. But it's a strange thing to hear those sort of muted recordings beautifully rendered. That's sort of a unique experience behind that.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're kind of an audiophile, tweaky person that really gets gets that stuff, and really, really, well, not gets it, but really, really loves that kind of stuff. I mean, that kind of nuance is one of the things that might draw you more towards the one step than any of the other ones. Although the classic vinyl series had it to a certain extent too. So
what we didn't get to review is the '70s Blue Label version, which I bet is really damn good.
Yeah, I thought I had
the middle of all these.
Yeah, I'm frustrated because I could have sworn I had it, but I couldn't find it anywhere in my collection. So I only had the classic vinyl and the one step. So all right, well, cool. Well, that is everything that we have for today. Hope you enjoyed it,
and you cannot go wrong with this record. This is just a delightful record. Whatever recording you get, the music is spectacular.
Yeah, if you're coming in just kind of curious about the record itself, don't hesitate to get it whatever version you get. The classic vinyl is obviously going to be your best value because it's probably going to be the cheapest option you can find besides maybe a used, old used copy or something like that. But that's maybe 70s used copy or 80s used
those
copy.
are coming up now.
Yeah, but so anyway, that's my take. What do you have an original stereo? I'd be curious to hear what you think about that one compared to the classic vinyl series on the one step, and what your thoughts are. And please leave the comments in the comment section below. If you liked what you saw here, hit that like button. If you subscribe to my channel, I thank you. If you don't, please do so. I'd appreciate that. And that is everything I have for today and everything I have for this week. Hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.